Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch. By the way, if you ever want to interact with us, like me and the other co-hosts, the best place is through Patreon. By becoming a patron, it's a smaller community that's easier for me to manage in terms of communicating with everyone. So if you DM me on Patreon or you comment on something on Patreon, I'm much more likely to see it. In fact, I'm very likely to see it and reply and whatnot. So yeah, let's watch.
We're designed for each other. And so to be where we are now, I'm shocked, I'm stunned.
And it hurts. How do I go from being so sure about something, so certain about anything that I've ever done in my life, to being so uncertain and unclear?
Whew. All right, so it sounds like for Marshall, he's starting to seriously question the relationship, or at least somewhat question. And yeah, this is why we usually take longer to date someone before we get engaged and get married, so that we can explore these experiences. So, by the way, they said 10 days until the wedding.
You need something to drink? Water? Something?
I need a water for sure. I'm tired. I had a long ass day. How are you feeling?
Seeing everyone else tonight, I need you to lay it out for me plain. What do you need from me? What do you require from me? So that I know moving forward. That's it.
Okay, so this is a good conversation, good opener from him. It could have been enhanced if he were to speak from his feelings of hurt or fear. Those are the two primary emotions usually in these situations. I'm guessing it would be something like, so I'm feeling a little insecure about where we're at, about if you love me or not. I'm afraid that maybe you don't really want to be with me, or you're uncertain. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's because of you. I'm just feeling insecure. So if you could reassure me in this moment, that'd be great. Or maybe just lay it out plain and tell me where I'm at. You know, something like that. The way that he worded it is, I think, implying what I was role-playing. And then for her, she visually crumbles. I don't know what that means. I think what it is it's that the same face and body language she had in the pods when she had to tell Marshall that there was another guy that she had been having some feelings for. And so I think it's a shame. I think it's a crumbling. I think there's a visceral feeling that she has when it's, you know, a lot of distress in that moment. When people are in distress, because, you know, when we were children, our parents would put hands on to comfort us. When we were 18 months and we fell down, our parents would pick us up, or they would, you know, rub where we got hurt, be like, oh, you hurt your knee or whatever. And we internalize that or evolved to crave that. And as adults, when we're in distress and we're going through an experience like this, we might want to hug ourselves. And for some people that I find that had particular neglect in terms of touch when they were young, they might even be in a constant state of rubbing this. You know, you'll see guys that have beards that will just be constantly doing this to themselves. It's not an indication, you know, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but in my experience, it's a minor indication of a potential avoidant attachment, emotional neglect. So if you or you know anyone who does that a lot, then you might want to add that to your repertoire of understanding this individual as being needy of a lot of physical affection. So anyway, let's see what she does here.
I need you to lay it out for me plain. What do you need from me? What do you require from me? So that I know moving forward. That's it.
So you see that deflation that she's just like, oh my God. So I'm guessing what happens is that he says, I need you to be honest with me. And then immediately she thinks, oh crap, I know I'm on the fence. I don't know if she's on the fence with Marshall or on the fence with Marshall and Josh, or she wants to be, or something, right? At least at the party, she didn't indicate that she wanted to be with Josh at all. But who knows? After seeing him, I think, for the first time in person, seemingly, anyway. But she immediately thinks, I have to say something that he isn't going to like. And I think based on her history, that didn't always go well, but I don't know. And so immediately you just see that, you know, we evolved from other species that also had emotions in all likelihood. We don't know that because we don't have a time machine, but other mammals that we evolved from also had emotion. They had emotion of pain, they had emotion of fear, and when there was a predator coming at the small little mammal that we used to be, they would feel fear and they would run, right? There'd be a fight or flight reaction. When the predator bites on them and they feel pain, then there's a wincing feeling and like this and run. And so we eventually evolved into social creatures. And as a social creature, we didn't have new emotions that needed to be invented. We just co-opted the emotions that guided survival in terms of physical survival. So when we feel rejection, we feel pain, and the same pain of being bitten or by having a predator come at us. And so when we feel a rejection or worry of rejection, you'll see people do this because that's what we did when we were about to get eaten. You'd be like, oh God, something's about to happen to me. And so it's an indication of that emotion. And it's interesting to think about, that we just seemingly co-opted all those emotions that guided us in physical survival, and we co-opted those emotions to guide our social survival, which was very, very important for us not only to procreate, but also to band together in small groups of humans so that we could survive. Other primates do this as well. But anyway, let's rewind and just see her go like this. And so the reason why I want to highlight this is that emotions are physical, they're bodily, they're somatic, and when you see it, it helps you to know what someone is going through. And when you're doing it, if you have a particular hard time knowing what emotion you're feeling, sometimes you can note the impulses that you have, whether it's just like, ha ha ha, like expansive and joyful. And because, when you do this, you're safe, right? When you see a friend and you open up and you're like, hey, and you put your arms out, like that's not what you do when you're unsafe. That's not what you do when you feel like you're about to be eaten by a predator. You do this. There are other kinds of impulses that our body will have that will tell us what's happening for us. The input comes in and the mind interprets it, and then there's an emotion that follows that, and then there's a physical feeling, and there's lots of different physical systems that are involved in emotion. And then we note it in our conscious prefrontal cortex. We're like, oh, I feel something in my gut. Usually that's associated with this, and so it must be this emotion. It's very important to get to know that. The vast majority of people, I would say even myself, are about maybe 40% aware. Like the most aware person of emotion is probably only 40% aware of what's really happening in their emotional life. And there are some people who are literally 0% aware of that. So a lot of self-awareness. Self-awareness is very important to understanding about what your needs are and how to live your life, how to point your life in a particular direction. And the key to knowing your needs is knowing your emotions. And the key to knowing your emotions is knowing your body.
Everyone else tonight, I need you to lay it out for me plain. What do you need from me? What do you require from me so that I know moving forward? That's it.
Oh my gosh. I can't talk about this anymore. My brain is shot, Marshall.
Like, it's almost midnight. Can we talk about this tomorrow?
So it's good. So yeah, makes sense. They had a really long day. Maybe she was at work early in the day. Who knows? But the party, the pressure, the cameras are still there, and she just doesn't want to get into it. She wants to avoid it. Who knows why? Is this a pattern? And that's okay. There are some things for some people that take almost no cognitive energy, and there are for other people where it takes tremendous cognitive energy. Like for extroverts, it takes almost no cognitive energy to socialize with groups of people. For introverted people, it takes tremendous, especially severe introverts, it takes tremendous cognitive energy to socialize with groups of people, to do the small talk, to hold a conversation with people that you don't know that well or something like that. And so it's stressful for them. So for one person, completely easy breezy and not stressful and not draining, and the extroverted person just gets to enjoy the moment. For the introvert, they're like really walking up a hill. They're dragging this rock up a hill. They're doing it, but it's just so much effort. So for Marshall right now, he's like, well, let's talk about it so that we can resolve this and go to bed without this hanging over our head, okay? because for Marshall, he's like, this is me just coasting down a hill of talking about emotions and our relation. For her, it's probably more of Yankee. And so for her, but what she did here was she had empathy, and she said to him, could we please, instead of being like, you always bring it up at late at night, or I don't want to talk about this, or there you go again with your emotions, or, some sort of insult or criticism as a way of avoiding the conversation. She says she doesn't want to, and she shows, you feel that emotion. And then she says to him in a pleading, inviting face of just like, hey, could we talk about it tomorrow? Now she could do a little better and be like, it's totally great you want to talk about it. I want to talk about it too. Because the way she's saying it is just like, do we have to? Okay, could we do it tomorrow? It's sort of a chore. It could come across like a chore to Marshall. And of course, for Marshall to be like, so you don't want to talk about our relationship? It can be very hurtful. And so for the Marshalls, if this continues, he might just shut down and stop broaching the topic. And then without him broaching the topic, Jackie's not going to broach the topic in all likelihood, or at least that's the pattern seemingly. And so the relationship just slowly disintegrates. So that's one worry. And then if you're the Marshall, you want to be careful about making the Jackies feel overworked and pressured. And also, if I were Marshall, I would attend, I might say, yeah, okay, we can talk about it tomorrow. But just for the record, I'm not trying to corner you. I'm just curious about how you feel. And I'm not accusing, because for the Jackies of the world, when the Marshalls come at like this, given their history and given the cognitive load that it takes on them, they might assume they're in trouble, or that this is going to go poorly for everyone. And it just feels like, could we just not do that today? Could we just avoid getting into a big fight? Whereas the Marshalls of the world might be thinking, well, we're not going to get into a fight necessarily. This could be a pleasant conversation. So tending to each other in that way, and think about it for yourself, because I'm guessing a number of you are in that camp.
I know, moving forward, that's it.
Oh my gosh. I can't talk about this anymore. My brain is shot, Marshall.
Like, it's almost midnight. Can we talk about this tomorrow?
If that's what you want.
You're doing great. I don't expect anything from you, and I think that you're doing just fine.
Okay, so I think from body language we see that Marshall is hurt that she doesn't want to talk about it. He's already coming from a place of worry of rejection anyway. And so I think he's also, so this is another over-functioning thing, another codependent thing, that he started out in the interview saying to the producers, I don't know about this relationship. I was so sure about it, now I'm not so sure. Instead of just sitting down and saying, I got to level with you, I'm on the fence, I don't know if we should be together. That's coming, codependent people and overfunctioners, when in doubt, they're much more comfortable talking about the other person's feelings and where the other person is at. They will defer, even though when they're on their own, they might be able to recognize where they're at. Instead of, in this moment, him going to her and expressing, I'm on the fence, where are you, right, that kind of thing. Or, here's my reaction to what happened at that party. I mean, Josh and you and where we're at, like, this is my experience, okay? Because to do that, if you're an overfunctioner, you're now at least appear, maybe even under, I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with overfunctioning, underfunctioning. In systems and family therapy, we understand that it's not this and this, it's the flexibility of it given each other's needs, right? So in this moment, it might make more sense if he were like this or like this, but because of the rigidity of it, which I don't think it's terribly rigid, he is now very much interested in what she thinks instead of him expressing himself.
You're doing great. I don't expect anything from you, and I think that you're doing just fine.
That was weird. There's almost there was an overdub. Let's rewind that, because it looks like you're doing just fine, and then a different word comes out. I mean, why would they? I must be mistaken. Let's rewind that.
You're doing great. I don't expect anything from you, and I think that you're doing just fine.
You're doing just livid. Did you hear that? But then the subtitle says you're doing just fine. I don't know. Maybe there's just a little a vocal anomaly in there. It sounded like you're doing just livid. But I will say that she notices that, okay, I see on his body language, or I intuit that he's hurt or worried or something. And so I'm going to do what I can to emotionally tend to that, which is good because that is not rigid this way, right? If she were more under functioning, she wouldn't even notice or maybe even care what he was going through. And she'd just be like, I don't want to talk about it, the way a child would, right? And just go to bed. But instead, she's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then she's like, oh, well, actually, sorry, you're doing great. Yeah, I think she's trying to say, look, if we're going to work out, you're doing great. There's nothing more you can do. So if this is going to work, then you're doing all the great things, but don't worry about it. Don't try to change anything because I don't think there's anything you can do about the fate of this relationship. I think that's what she's saying.
You're doing great. I don't expect anything from you, and I think that you're doing just good.
I was left with a big question mark.
From me or internally because you have that question mark?
From you.
I thought we were fine. I thought we ended.
So it's interesting that she asked that clarifying question of, so you have a question mark from me or you have a question mark for yourself? By the way, I just noticed they have these bright lights that I think are for filming. You wouldn't, I don't know, maybe they're just regular accent lights, but I could also imagine that these places that they film in are heavily lit for prime video quality. But anyway, so she is saying, so for you, are you saying there's a question mark for you or are you talking about for me? And there was an opportunity for him to say, well, I guess there's kind of a question mark for me too. I think there might be that would be more like this, but instead he's more deferring to tell me what you feel. And that is indicative of that type of codependent, the controlling type, which he doesn't exhibit. There's a controlling aspect to all codependency, but the overtly abusive controlling type is not what we're seeing here. What we're seeing is an accommodation type. And the accommodation type, and this is my typology, I haven't seen it in the literature. Codependent people are very focused outside themselves in general. For the accommodation type of codependent, they are very much that way. And they don't even register that they have a self usually, especially in the midst of conflict like this.
Sugarcoat or change anything based off of how you're feeling anymore.
Totally valid.
Just tell me exactly what you need from me so I'm not guessing through the night and guessing when we wake up because you leave before I even start my day.
But I always come back home.
But that does not mean that I'm not thinking about it throughout the day.
Okay, so he's being more vulnerable. By the way, this couple provides us with so much data that I don't usually see on other shows. And I commend Love is Blind for not trying to, this looks like a genuine conversation. And they're also seemingly just letting it play out and not editing in a bunch of silences and cutting up the conversation. Who knows? But 90 Day Fiancé, almost all the conversations that are along these lines are massively edited and manufactured. I mean, I imagine a lot of the conversations, even edited, are representative of the relationship in general, seemingly. Hard to know. But I remember Love is Blind, previous seasons, in contrast to 90 Day, where they just let the conversation breathe. They just let it happen, and then they just post it. They just put it in the show and just let the reality of the reality show be a reality. And so we're given that opportunity. And the way that they talk to each other, there's so many things about this that are along the lines of what I do in my professional life, of these back and forth, these movements of like, okay, I'm hurt. Okay, now she tends to him. He now opens up, eye contact. Now there's this reassurance, and then he's now being more vulnerable. There's all these little moments that if you pay attention to them when you're in a couple, you can engineer a conversation that can go very badly potentially and have it not go badly, have it actually go really well. And that's the key. The things that you're often talking about, the content is often not what the fight actually derives from. It's these little moments, these little moments of empathy and communicating that and care, openness, trust, building that between the two. And so, because he starts off saying, let's talk about where are you? And then she crumbles. She's like, I don't want to talk about it. And then she probably, I should probably tend to him. She starts tending to him. You're doing everything great. Everything's fine. he has body language that he's like, well, it certainly doesn't feel that way, seemingly. And then she starts to be more caring to him. She's open. She's, eye contact. He starts to turn to her, and now I will say that it's strange that she doesn't have a question mark. I mean, they came separately. He, upon coming to the party, said basically their relationship was on the rocks. So maybe Jackie is unaware of that right now, or avoiding that right now, or something.
I had an emotional day. I'm having emotional conversations with people that I don't even know what the fuck is going on. And I'm just like, I just want to go to bed.
I'm tired just as much as you are. I gotta go into the office tomorrow. I gotta go to Redmond tomorrow.
And so he's saying that he doesn't want to go to bed with this hanging over his head. She goes to work in the morning before he does. So he's like, well, we're going to have to wait, 20 hours until we can even talk about this again. That's going to be hard for me to deal with. And okay, yeah. But you could also see her side where she's like, I got to wake up early tomorrow. I really can't get into it right now. So could we just not?
I gotta go into the office tomorrow. I gotta go to Redmond tomorrow.
Be good.
We're not good. I need to know exactly what you require from me so that I can move forward.
What I told you, what I required from you, is the reason why you left.
But
I'm not saying that shit again.
So what are the examples though?
Okay, so it's interesting phrasing. It has, I just need to know what you need from me so that I can move forward. That's that accommodation type of codependent, where it's just like that anxiety of losing the partner. And so the default is, how can I serve you? That's my purpose. That's my worth. And so I don't have emotions. I don't have needs, especially in the midst of this conversation. And so just tell me what to do and I'll do it for you. And then everything will be fine. Instead of, how can we both meet each other's needs, right? So let me be clear. There's nothing wrong. If I were to go to my wife and say, what can I do to serve you as a husband? Serve as a funny one. But how can I be a better husband for you? What do you want from me? I want to know what that is, because that will help me to know what you need, and I don't want to lose you. And so I want to do everything I can to be the best husband so that I don't lose you. You know what I mean? Now, you could word that in a way, and even the way I did word it, it could come across as desperate. It could come across as you're not even thinking about your own feelings. You're just completely focused on serving someone else. It's begging or something like that, which deny yourself the opportunity to have your own needs. But anyway, so he words it that way. And then she says, well, the thing that I want from you is the thing we fought about before, I think referring to, I want you to be aggressive in bed. And then he says, well, can I have some examples? Which is great, because that was the whole thing when the previous fighting about this. I was like, we have no idea what they're talking about. I assumed they knew what they were talking about, but we didn't. And by the way, just a side note on this, couples will come into my office sometimes. Couples have rich lives together, especially long-term couples. And they'll start fighting about something or discussing a topic, and I will have almost no idea what they're talking about. And it would break. Sometimes I need to know, and I'll be like, can you tell me what's going on with this? But sometimes, especially later on in therapy, as it progresses, I'll just let it breathe and really try to focus on the process that they're going through and not the content. And I'll have no clue what they're talking about. And I'll say, well, I don't need to know. And as a therapist, you always want to think about, am I asking this question because I'm curious? Or am I asking this question because I think it'll be helpful? Because sometimes people are just curious about things, but you don't want to derail therapy just for your own shits and giggles about having a particular detail told to you. You know what I mean? Like a couple's like, so we were fighting and we went to a movie last night, and on the way home from the movie, and then you stop it as a therapist to be like, so what movie did you go to? Just because you're curious. Oh, really? Was it good? That's an exaggeration, but therapists will do that sometimes. I've probably done something along those lines at some point. Anyway. It sounds like they don't even know what they're talking about. I mean, they're trying to get it across, but he's like, can you give me some examples? When you talk about aggressive, what are you talking about exactly? And so, it's beginning hard. Now for her, she's like, I don't want to get into it. It's late. I want to go to bed. This could be a long conversation. We talk about it later, which is totally fine. She might also not want to talk about it in front of the cameras, which would also be fine.
But I'm not saying that shit again.
So what are the examples though?
I can't give no examples at no midnight, bro. Marshall, I think you are a great guy. I think you're so sweet.
So it's good. She tries to take care of him in this moment. You could imagine for him, he's like, so I'm friend zoned or whatever it is that people say. I don't like that phrase. It's usually in a misogynistic tone of just like, how dare you friend zone me? That kind of thing. Usually men are saying it anyway. So I'm not a fan of what I just said. At the very least, you can imagine him saying like, okay, that's nice that you're hugging me and you're reassuring me, but it seems to be indicating, well, I'll just tell you the way it looks. It looks like she is saying, you're a sweet, it's the way that you talk to someone when you're breaking up with someone, the way that we see people breaking up with people on the show, of just like, you're a great person, you know. Anytime anyone comes up to you in a relationship, is just like, so I just want to start this off by saying, you're a great person. It kind of has that tone, right? That she's either consciously or unconsciously mostly out of the door, which we could imagine. I mean, they've had so much conflict, and there might be some very fundamental incompatibilities in bed or vibe-wise that at least she believes they just can't overcome, which, there's no fault in that. Just realizing, like, I liked you in the pods. Upon meeting you, you're a great person, but I don't feel that energy that I need to have in a romantic sexual relationship.
Great guy. I think you're so sweet. Just love me.
Just love me. Huh. I don't know. That's confusing. Is she saying we're going to get married, so love me? Or be nice, love me? I don't know. It's just a lot of questions, because I was assuming that she's saying you're a great guy because she just really appreciates he's a great guy, but she's just not feeling it. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Tune in next time when I continue watching. If you didn't know, we have merch, and I'm also on Cameo, which are both fun things. Here's some merch right here. Here's the apology checklist on a little tumbler. I really like these tumblers. They're very, I don't know, they're just the perfect kind of size. And they keep your things the way that temperature-wise you want them to be. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.